1969. Chevrolet's Warren Tech Center, Michigan. Zora Arkus-Duntov, the godfather of the Corvette, stands in front of GM executives with blueprints for a radical new car. Mid-engine layout, transversely mounted V8, 700 pounds lighter than the current Corvette, and performance that would embarrass Ferrari. The executives look at each other. One finally speaks. "Zora, this would make the current Corvette obsolete overnight. We just launched the C3. Arkus-Duntov's response is blunt. "Then we'll lose to the Europeans. Your choice." GM's choice? Kill the project, lock the prototypes in a warehouse, and pretend they never existed. For the next 50 years, GM would build mid-engine Corvette prototypes over and over again. Beautiful, functional, production-ready cars that could have redefined American performance. And every single time, management killed them. This is the story of the Corvette that GM built 9 times and canceled 9 times. The beginning. CERV I, and the race car that started it all. The mid-engine Corvette story actually starts in 1960, not 1969. Arkus-Duntov had been watching Ferrari develop mid-engine race cars and realized Chevrolet needed to experiment with the layout. So he built the CERV I, Chevrolet Engineering Research Vehicle, using a Corvette engine mounted behind the driver and a Corvair transaxle. It was officially a research vehicle, but everyone knew the truth. Arkus-Duntov wanted to prove mid-engine was the future. The CERV I never raced and never wore a Corvette badge, but it planted the seed. The XP882, the production car that almost happened. 1968 to 1970. The closest GM ever came to building a mid-engine Corvette until the C8. With the C3 Corvette successfully launched, Arkus-Duntov started developing its replacement immediately. But instead of another front-engine car, he went rogue and built 2 mid-engine prototypes called XP882. These weren't concept cars, they were production-ready prototypes. 8 inches shorter than the C3, nearly 6 inches wider, and 700 pounds lighter than the C3. The engine was mounted transversely behind the driver, just like a Ferrari or Lamborghini. Most importantly, the XP882 looked like a Corvette. It had the crossed flags badge, the iconic body language, and styling that made it instantly recognizable. GM executives loved it. Production approval seemed certain. Then GM killed it. Why? Because they'd just spent millions developing the C3, and releasing a vastly superior mid-engine replacement would make it look obsolete. GM chose short-term profits over long-term innovation. The Aerovette, the rotary-engine disaster. But Arkus-Duntov wouldn't quit. In the early 1970s, GM was obsessed with Wankel rotary engines. So Arkus-Duntov took the XP882 chassis, grafted together 2 twin-rotor Wankel engines to create a 420-horsepower quad-rotor monster, and renamed it XP895. The car was stunning, and the public went crazy for it. But the rotary engine was a disaster. Terrible fuel economy, emissions problems, and catastrophic reliability issues. When the 1973 oil crisis hit, GM killed the entire Wankel program overnight. Did they abandon the mid-engine Corvette? No. They swapped the rotary for a conventional 400 cubic inch V8, renamed it the Aerovette, and toured it as a potential next Corvette. Bill Mitchell, GM's design chief, championed it. This should be the next Corvette. GM management's response? Too expensive to produce. The Aerovette was shelved. The CERV III, 650 horsepower and scissor doors. 1986. A new generation of engineers decides to try again. They build the Corvette Indy, later renamed CERV III, as a technology showcase. 4-wheel drive, 4-wheel steering, twin-turbocharged 5.7-liter V8 making 650 horsepower, scissor doors, and a body made from carbon fiber and Kevlar. But unlike previous concepts, the CERV III was designed with production feasibility in mind. The nose met federal bumper height standards. The door glass could actually roll down. The wheel arches provided clearance for real suspension travel. This was the closest we'd ever come to a production-ready mid-engine Corvette, one engineer later said. GM's decision? Don't build it. Too expensive, too exotic, too risky. Why GM kept killing it? Here's the pattern that repeated for half a century. Every time engineers built a mid-engine Corvette, it was better than the current production car. And every time GM management killed it for the same reason. It would make their existing Corvette obsolete and cannibalize sales. GM was trapped by their own success. The front-engine Corvette sold well and made money. Why risk that proven formula on something radical? Even though the mid-engine layout was objectively superior, GM chose incremental improvements over revolution. Arkus-Duntov understood this perfectly. In a 1975 interview, he said, "GM will never build a mid-engine Corvette while the current car still sells." He was almost right. It took 44 more years. The C8, finally, after 52 years. 2020, the C8 Corvette finally launches with a mid-mounted engine. 52 years after Duntov built the first XP882 prototype, GM finally did what they should have done in 1970. The C8 uses a naturally aspirated V8 mounted behind the driver, just like every prototype since the CERV I. But here's the irony. The C8 doesn't exist because GM finally embraced innovation. It exists because they ran out of excuses. Front-engine Corvette sales were declining. Porsche and Ferrari were stealing customers, and after 50 years of prototypes, they'd already paid for the R&D multiple times. The C8 became the fastest-selling Corvette in history, proof that Arkus-Duntov was right in 1968. The legacy, the prototypes that never were. Somewhere in GM's archives sit the remains of those prototypes. CERV I, XP882, Aerovette, CERV III, and countless clay models and engineering mules that never got names. Each one was production-ready, each one could have redefined the Corvette, and each one was killed by executives who feared change more than they valued innovation. Arkus-Duntov died in 1996, 24 years before the C8 launched. He spent his entire career fighting for a mid-engine Corvette and never saw it happen. But his prototypes, buried in warehouses for decades, proved he was right all along.